Dzień dobry, nazywam się Błażej Hrabkowicz. To jest 61. Krakowski Festiwal Filmowy, stacjonarnie i online. Mamy kolejnych wspaniałych gości, a another fantastic guests are here with us today. The directors of Generation Utoya, Generation Utoya, Sigve Andersen and Aslaug Holm. Hello.
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 How are you? I hope everything is okay. Beautiful weather in Norway, from what I'm hearing. So,
yeah, it's really nice to be here, and I hope it's nice in Warsaw too.
Well, let's hope it's nice in Warsaw. Let's hope it's nice in Krakow. Also,
Yeah.
These days, geographical location is, I think, maybe less and less important. Although let's hope it will be important soon as we come out of this pandemic. But speaking of things to come out of, trauma, national trauma is, I think, one of them. And your film touches upon this very traumatic event that shook Norway. Well, it was what, almost 10 years ago, if I'm correct. The Utoya massacre, committed by Anders Breivik. And I want to start with asking you, from your perspective, what do you think this event meant for Norway, for Norwegian society, for Norwegian politics? And is it comparable to, for example, the meaning that 9/11 had for the Americans, do you think?
It's the most dramatic thing that has happened since the World War II in Norway, and it came as a real shock that something like this could happen in a very peaceful part of the world. But of course, the attitudes of Breivik, we maybe weren't so aware of at that time, but he didn't invent all these theories about racism, and he picked that up. And unfortunately, these kind of attitudes has been living in the society and is maybe becoming stronger during those 10 years.
But it's also interesting in Norway, actually. We met the hate with love message. If you compare to 9/11 in the US, we all remember President Bush was talking about revenge. But in Norway, actually, the prime minister and the leader of the Labour Party, Jens Stoltenberg, he was talking about more freedom and more democracy. And it was, the focus was the love message. So in the first period after the terror attack of 22nd of July, it was really good, common feeling about mourning and meet the hater with love. But then as years has gone by, we are now in a way missing this difficult conversation. Now we have to take this, what Sigve talks about, what was really happened, that it was a political attack on a youth labor organization. And we have to dare to speak loud about it now, also in Norway.
Yeah, you mentioned this subject of this necessity of having a honest conversation about it, and I think this is what your film is about, to reflect upon this tragedy from the perspective, from the sort of hindsight we have now, and you stress very much in your film, and your characters stress it very much, that this was an act of political terrorism. These people were killed for their beliefs, and it's never. Well, you can never repeat that. You can never stress that enough. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and on the other side, the film also shows that our main characters, they are still fighting for the same social democrat ideas about equality and will not be stopped by the terrorists. But so maybe they even is becoming stronger from that experience.
Mm-hmm. I think it was really important for us to reflect on the terror attack through these young voices, because they have this power and they have decided to continue with politics, and that gives hope. And also, I mean, they stand up every morning and go out in the world and speak out, even if they are afraid of being attacked again. So the grown-up generation, which I belongs to, may say that I'm really inspired of this young generation, because I think they are taking some issues in their mouth and hands and try to change the world, even if we are maybe living in these dark times with polarization all over the world. So the hope is anyway stronger than this dark period, I think.
Coming back for a second to what you said, Aslak, about different response in Norway to this tragedy when compared to the response in the United States to 9/11, political response, like the response from the government. And why do you believe this difference occurred? Why do you think this was different? Is it a cultural thing, and the way that sort of Norwegian society is built? What is your opinion?
I think it's yes. I think it's a cultural thing, because our society is built on really strong democratic values, and I also think it's a class question, a social question, because in Norway we live in a society that hasn't had so much differences between people in social and economic standards, and that is a really high value that we have to fight for. Because I think nowadays
you mean there isn't you mean there isn't much so much inequality like the United States,
yeah,
like in the US.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really big quality in Norway, and also in the North countries in Sweden and Denmark, and that gives in a way equality that also is stronger boundaries between people. We have more trust in politicians, and we have more trust in society and these common values. But these values are threatened, because we see also in Norway that this it's changing, and some people are getting more and more rich, and some people are leaving behind, and that's so scary and frightening, because I think this hatred that came from these people that are left behind is what there starts this threat of also terrorism. We have to see that these threats are coming inside, not outside, because this was a young white man that have lived in Norway all his upgrowing, and he was, in a way, he lived in a society that has, he wasn't poor, but he saw how other people was so succeeded, and he felt that he didn't succeed. So I think these common values are so important for have these strong values also in the society.
It is true that we sometimes, the media and we as a society sometimes focus so much on the external threats, like, for example, Islamic terrorism, when this is the case of domestic homegrown terrorism, a man who was born and raised in the Western society. He was a white male from Norway. But Sigve, would you agree also that this kind of equality by which from which the Norway and the Nordic countries are famous for is beginning to sort of started shaking and is being destabilized right now?
Yeah, I think so. Just one factor is yeah, that more and more of you know, all kinds of money and properties are on fewer and fewer people. And I think nowadays you could compare Norway to other more sort of class-oriented countries like England or US. We are going in the same direction. And we think, I think that, of course, this is a reason for polarization in society. And there is also one group left behind, which is the immigrants, that also needs to be sort of included in society in a much better way to keep this, you know, because the other side of terror could come from that side too. Yeah. That we have seen in Europe, other places, but so far in Norway we haven't seen that. We've seen only right-wing terrorists.
Yeah, and do you believe that after Breivik attack, this sort of right-wing extremism has become a much bigger problem in Norway? And do you think that right conclusions on a political and societal level were drawn from the Utøya massacre, and maybe some changes were implemented? Because from your film, when I'm watching your film, I get, you don't, maybe you don't address it always directly, but I get the impression that too little actually was done, and that's why these young politicians are so vital today with their desire to change.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think after the terror attack, there was this period. It was important to take, pronounce the message of love. But then the political discussion, in a way, was didn't evolve. It was stopped. It was people was afraid of talking about these difficult questions. I think all Europe and US are dealing with the same, issues that we have to solve, and that is the immigration and also the environment. We belong to the same world, so we have to see ourselves in a bigger context. And that's a problem. If you only are fighting for your own country and you are afraid of what is happening out in the world, we will be forced by fear instead of changes, which is so necessary nowadays. And I think the young voices, in a way, are taking this step in front of us and raising their voices and say to us grown up, now we have to say, this is important. And we have filmed for about 3 years, and during those 3 years, something is changing, something is happening, which is positive, I think, because some of these leading politicians, also the grown-up politicians, are now standing in front and taking the questions loudly, because I think they see it's necessary. And they also are, for example, Jonas Gahr Støre, which is the leader of the Labour Party, he recently stood up and supported Ina not Ina, but Astrid Villa Eide Hoem, which is the new leader of the youth organization, and also Kamzy, which is the deputy mayor in Oslo, and supported them against this struggle against racism and this hater on social media. I think that is really important now to say, this is enough. We don't tolerate this kind of hatred, violence on the social media. We can discuss politics, but we have to draw a line, what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I see some signs of it now. I think that's really happening in the Norwegian politician landscape.
Sigve, do you have similar observations, or maybe you're a bit less optimistic?
Hmm. Yeah,
I don't want to
general,
encourage you to be pessimistic. I'm just asking questions.
No, I'm also hoping for this young generation that they will be able to do what Ina says, that they can actually change the world to a better place. In a way, that's the first young generation since the 70s, where there was the big, students' uprisings and so. So I'm optimistic on that part, but I think the established politicians I'm not so optimistic about. We need a young generation.
Maybe
but
the whole.
Yeah, but I also think it's really important to trust, because what's a great value in Norway is that we trust on people and also on politicians. And if we lose trust on them, then we have this darkness, and we lose also faith in democracy. Yeah. So I think we have to strengthen the trust and maybe challenge the politicians. You have to do that. Now we have to go in front when we see Europe, what's happening in the immigration issues. Norway is, privileged. We have to go one step in front and actually act. And that I hope will happen.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you said. And I think that it also stems from your film, and your characters have a different, similar attitude, that there has to be some trust maintained in the politicians' political process and institutions. Otherwise, the Utoya massacre can be repeated, and this sort of violence that can prevail. But I think that maybe the hope is that the established politicians Sigve mentioned will soon be, your characters will soon be established politicians, and soon be, deciding the direction of the country and the world, and maybe the pressure of these bigger issues will also put these older politicians in a position which they have to do something. And I think that is the hope that comes from your film, that really these are the people that can change things in politics, not in activism, in politics, actually.
Yeah. And I also think if you see those four, strong women which are continuing with politics, it gives really hope, because, for example, Ina, which was the leader on the Youth Labour Party, the young organization, she's actually working now out in the real world. She wants to get experience and feel these issues on her body. She's a socionom, she'll go out, help people, and she will come back, I promise. And Kamsi, she's elected now for, the parliament, and that's so great. She's immigrant from Sri Lanka originally. She has lived all her upgrowing in Norway, but she has also a background from Sri Lanka, and she's this tough politician that actually go out in the world and change things. And now she's the new hope for the Labour Party. She's on the second place after the leader. So that gives some energy, I think, in this new generation of politicians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that I don't know if you agree. Maybe I will direct this question to Sigve now. That from one of the main conflicts in politics, I think, and your film, I think, confirms that, is even inside the left-wing parties, inside the political parties as a whole, between the conflict between these older established politicians and these younger progressive wings of these parties. We see it in the Democratic Party, for example, in the United States, and we see that this progressive movement is beginning to have much more influence now when we see which policies President Biden is pursuing. But would you agree that this is also the conflict that we see in Norway, in Labour Party, that the pressure from the progressive politicians on the older established officials.
Yeah, I hope this young generation will win forward. But the thing is, when you then become grown up and established, then you also see that you have to make all kinds of compromises to get things done. So it's sometimes I feel that the established politicians are more occupied with keeping things as they are, as you know, you're becoming more conservative by age until you reach my age, then you start to radicalize again, I think.
That's a good thing. Then we can go radical. But
so you're saying, Sigve, that you are after your conservative period. That is over.
Yeah, I'm into the sort of grandparents situation, which have to think about their grandchildren's future.
Yeah. Aslak, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I also think that actually the young politicians in AUF, this youth organization, they have actually managed to challenge the Labour Party in this politics of environment. It's actually a quite big change there now, because they have much more ambitions in the environment questions. And I think Ina has a really good impact on that. And I think she and the AUF is really proud of that process that I've been through.
What you mentioned, Sigve, that this sort of the being aware that you have to make compromise to get things done. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I think that these young politicians, when they make a move from activism to politics, they see that you have to have a certain amount of pragmatism. And it's not the same as cynicism. And I think maybe the challenge is to, when you're an established politician, when these people, Ina and others in the film, will become established politicians, not to be cynical, but to know what you can compromise in order to get things done. Maybe that's the challenge.
Yeah, and I also think you have to remember where this energy come from and where the people are. You have to have contact with the people. You have to go out in the world and all the time speak on behalf of the people. And that's, I think the Labour Party, they have so many, they have both responsibility and also challenges to many different people in the same party. So they have big ambitions, but at the same time, it's so many people they are going to speak for. So it's so important, I think, to be out in the world and not forget people on the ground and make progress in cases that mean something for people.
Sigve, want to add something to that? From your grandparent radical point of view?
Yeah, but you see, one of the big issues in the world now is about the climate, and that we need change into different kind of energy. And that's where you can see this kind of problems of finding compromises, because some people are afraid of losing their jobs in the oil industry and so, and the Labour Party is supposed to also represent
workers,
these workers who are dependent on oil. So it's difficult to sort of compromise on these two things, because the oils bring money into the society that can be used for welfare for everybody. But what should we use that welfare for if the globe is sort of heating too much and it's becomes unlivable.
Yeah, I think that this is probably in terms of climate change, and this is actually very it is depicted in your film. These discussions that Ina has as a leader of the youth organization for the Labour Party, and she has these discussions with the leader of Labour Party, and this is the challenge: yeah, how to move forward with climate change without leaving more people behind economically, which in turn will fuel more radicalism and make another Anders Breivik, probable. So this is there has to be a solution for that, I think. Otherwise, we won't be able to move forward.
I think Ina was actually she made to challenge these union people because she was sitting in a committee and together with these labor union people and also with Jonas Gahr Støre, which is the leader, and they actually managed to change this environment politics because the economics also will in a way have impact on their direction in the politics because young people don't want to buy stuff that is made under conditions which is not in good environment. So they actually changed to get this progress. So in this program for this year, they have big ambitions, I think, with these environment issues. So it was a huge step for Ina and AUF that they actually managed to talk to these, guys that have worked all their life in the industry to actually listen to these young voices and change these politics.
I think this is important what you said, that if more and more people don't want to buy these products which are made in a way which is detrimental to environment, and then it will create economic pressure on all these big companies to actually adjust to those people and their needs, their consumer needs, to actually make money. So this is maybe and also an important issue to sort of use this, use capitalism actually to make things better.
I think that's actually it's happening now in Norway because now they have made some, investigations. They have studied such cases and they see that the oil production is not economic in the future.
Yeah, it's not economically viable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing. So they have to stop actually now much earlier than they actually have planned, I think, with oil production in Norway. Yeah. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, and
isn't that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good that we're talking about these, optimistic changes and processes because your film is made on the back of such a tragedy. And and also deals with so many existential issues to all humanity, like climate change. And I think that your characters are the main reason, I think, and their activism and their politics is the main reason for optimism. So thank you very much for presenting the film Generation Utoya at the Krakow Film Festival, and thank you for being with us today, Sigve Endresen, Aslak Holm. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and also for being in this wonderful film festival, Krakow Film Festival. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Yes, and next time we will be there in Krakow, actually, physically.
Okay, and now you made a promise that we will hold you to it. So see you next time in person, and have a nice day, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.